It was one of those sweltering afternoons in suburban Atlanta, where the air hung heavy with the scent of magnolias and fresh-cut grass, the kind that makes you grateful for the hum of central AC blasting through every open window. Sarah Jenkins had just pulled her Prius into the parking lot of the local Home Depot, her shopping list clutched in one hand like a battle plan. New shelves for the garage, paint for the fence, and a set of those fancy LED lights she'd seen on Pinterest to spruce up the backyard patio. At 38, Sarah was the epitome of that quiet, determined American grind. A single mom who'd clawed her way up from barista gigs to a mid-level marketing job at a tech firm, all while raising her teenage son, Jamal, who was knee-deep in college applications and dreaming of engineering school. She wasn't flashy, dressed in her usual jeans and a faded Georgia Tech hoodie, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. But today, something felt off from the moment she stepped out of the car. A prickling awareness, like eyes boring into her back, across the lot. In the shadow of a towering stack of lumber stood Evelyn Hargrove, arms crossed over her crisp white blouse, her pearl necklace glinting like a badge of superiority under the Georgia sun. Evelyn was 62, a retired bank teller who'd spent her days behind a teller window, judging people's finances and, apparently, their worth by the shade of their skin. She lived in one of those gated communities a few miles away, the kind with signs boasting family values since 1985, where her idea of neighborhood watch involved binoculars and a notebook full of suspicious activities. Today, she'd come to Home Depot not for supplies, but for her weekly ritual, patrolling the aisles like a self-appointed sheriff, convinced that every non-white face was a potential threat to the American way. And there, weaving through the garden section with a cart half full of potting soil and heirloom tomato starters, was Sarah, Evelyn's latest fixation. Sarah didn't notice her at first. She was too busy debating between two shades of coral paint, holding swatches up to the light filtering through the massive skylights. The store buzzed with the low murmur of weekend shoppers, a dad hoisting bags of mulch onto his shoulder, a couple arguing good-naturedly over which grill to buy, the overhead speakers crackling with announcements about flash sales on power tools. It was ordinary, comforting even, until Sarah reached for a display of garden gnomes. Those kitschy little statues Jamal swore were colonial nonsense, but she found them charming for her herb garden edging. As her fingers brushed one, a sharp voice sliced through the air like a switchblade. "Excuse me, Missy, what do you think you're doing?" Sarah turned, paint swatch still in hand, to find Evelyn planted in front of her like a human barricade. The woman's face was a mask of pinched disapproval, lips pursed so tight they could crack walnuts, her eyes narrowed behind oversized tortoiseshell glasses. Up close, Evelyn smelled of lavender hand sanitizer and entitlement, the kind that comes from decades of unchallenged privilege. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, keeping her tone even, though a flicker of annoyance stirred in her chest. She'd dealt with types like this before, store clerks second-guessing her coupons, neighbors side-eyeing her at the community pool. But something about this woman's stare felt personal, laced with a venom that went beyond mere rudeness. "You heard me," Evelyn snapped, her voice carrying just enough volume to draw a few glances from nearby shoppers. "You're pawing through merchandise like it belongs to you. I saw you slip that gnome into your cart when you thought no one was looking. Thief." The word landed like a slap. Sarah's stomach dropped, heat rising to her cheeks not from embarrassment but from the sheer audacity. She glanced at her cart. Empty except for the soil and starters, the gnome still squarely on the shelf where it belonged. "Ma'am, I haven't touched anything. If you'd like, I can call an associate to—" "Oh, don't you ma'am me with that innocent act," Evelyn interrupted, her drawl thickening with outrage. She jabbed a manicured finger toward Sarah's hoodie, as if it were evidence in a lineup. "I know your type. Coming in here, thinking you can just take what doesn't belong to you. This is a respectable store, not some welfare handout line. Security, we have a shoplifter!" Heads turned now, a ripple of whispers spreading through the aisle like dry leaves in the wind. A middle-aged man in a baseball cap paused mid-stride, his brow furrowing in confusion. A young mom with a toddler in tow quickened her pace, steering clear as if contamination were airborne. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, a mix of fury and fear churning in her gut. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a spectacle designed to humiliate, to paint her as the villain in the story Evelyn had scripted long before today. And beneath it all, Sarah could feel the undercurrent, the way Evelyn's gaze lingered on her brown skin, the subtle curl of her lip that screamed volumes about your type. Before Sarah could respond, a burly store associate in an orange vest lumbered over, walkie-talkie crackling at his hip. "Everything all right here, ladies?" he asked, his eyes darting between them, settling uncertainly on Evelyn's indignant posture. "This woman," Evelyn declared, pointing dramatically, "tried to steal a garden gnome. I saw it with my own eyes. She's been lurking around the displays and now she's denying it. Call the police. People like her need to learn a lesson." The associate, a guy named Mike who'd worked the floor for 8 years and prided himself on diffusing drama before it escalated, sighed inwardly. He'd seen his share of Karens, entitled soccer moms demanding rain checks on clearance items, but this felt heavier, charged with something uglier. "Ma'am," he said to Evelyn, then turned to Sarah. "Did you—" "No," Sarah cut in firmly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She met his eyes, willing him to see the truth. "I was just looking. Check the cameras if you need to." "But this is ridiculous," Mike nodded, glancing at the shelf. The gnome sat innocently, price tag undisturbed. "All right, let's not jump to conclusions. I can review the footage quick-like." But Evelyn wasn't having it. She whipped out her phone, already dialing 911 with theatrical flair. "I'm reporting this myself. Can't trust store security these days, hello? Yes, this is an emergency. A theft in progress at Home Depot on Peachtree Corners. Black woman, mid-30s, trying to steal garden ornaments. Send someone now." Sarah's world narrowed to the tinny voice on the other end, the growing circle of onlookers, the way her shopping list fluttered to the floor like a white flag of surrender. How had a simple errand spiraled into this? She thought of Jamal waiting at home, probably glued to his laptop researching scholarships, oblivious to the storm brewing. She thought of the times she'd bitten her tongue, at parent-teacher conferences when teachers assumed she was the nanny, at job interviews where her resume spoke volumes, but her face prompted extra questions. This was that, amplified, weaponized by a stranger's prejudice. But Sarah wasn't one to crumble. Not anymore. She straightened her shoulders, pulling out her own phone. "Fine, let's get this sorted. But when they see the truth, ma'am, you might want to start apologizing." The police arrived in under 10 minutes, 2 officers stepping through the automatic doors with the practiced nonchalance of routine calls. Officer Ramirez, a stocky Latina in her 40s with a no-nonsense braid, took the lead, while her partner, a lanky rookie named Ellis, hung back, notepad at the ready. The store had cleared a path to the garden center, Mike standing awkwardly by with his tablet, footage queued up. Evelyn hovered like a vulture, repeating her story with embellishments. How Sarah had sneaked in from the parking lot, how she'd eyed other items suspiciously, how this was just like that incident at the Walmart last month. Ramirez listened, her expression neutral, then turned to Sarah. "Ma'am, can you walk me through what happened from your side?" Sarah did, concisely, her words measured but laced with the quiet steel of someone who'd navigated worse. She described arriving, browsing, the sudden accusation. No raised voices from her end, no evasion. Ellis jotted notes, occasionally glancing at Evelyn, whose foot tapped impatiently against the concrete floor. "All right," Ramirez said, nodding to Mike. "Let's see that video." The tablet screen flickered to life, capturing the last 20 minutes in crisp clarity. There was Sarah, pushing her cart, pausing at the paint display, chatting briefly with another shopper about fertilizer brands. Then the gnome shelf. No sleight of hand, no pocket stuffing, just a casual glance before Evelyn's approach. The footage caught it all. Evelyn's exaggerated gestures, her phone thrust forward as if filming a crime documentary. Sarah's calm rebuttal. The timestamp was irrefutable. Evelyn's face drained of color, then flushed crimson. That's edited. Or the cameras are wrong. She must have done it earlier. I swear, I saw her." Ramirez raised an eyebrow, her voice gentle but firm. "Ma'am, this is live feed from multiple angles, no edits. Looks like a false alarm here." She turned to Sarah. "We're sorry for the inconvenience, miss. You want to press charges for filing a false report?" Sarah hesitated, the weight of the question settling like lead. Part of her wanted Evelyn to feel the sting of consequences, to explain to her bridge club why she'd spent an afternoon in a squad car. But another part, the part raised on turning the other cheek until it bruised, whispered to let it go. "No," she said finally. "Just make sure it doesn't happen again." The officers exchanged a look, Ramirez slipping Evelyn a stern warning about the penalties for baseless accusations, fines, potential misdemeanor charges if it escalated. Evelyn muttered something about good Samaritans and protecting the community, but her bluster had deflated, her pearls now seeming like a noose. As the cops dispersed the lingering crowd, Sarah gathered her scattered items, her hands shaking just enough to betray the adrenaline crash. She paid at self-checkout, the beep of the scanner a small victory, and wheeled her cart out into the blinding sunlight. But the story didn't end there. Oh no, it was just beginning to unravel in ways Evelyn Hargrove could never have dreamed. See, Sarah wasn't just any marketing exec dodging daily microaggressions. For the past 6 months, she'd been living a double life, not as a spy or a secret agent, but as the undercover interim CEO of Brightpath Retail, the very parent company that owned Home Depot, and a string of other big-box stores across the Southeast. It started when the board, spooked by whispers of internal theft and slipping employee morale, tapped Sarah for the role. "Go in quiet," they'd said. "Shop like a customer, chat with staff, root out the rot without the fanfare." At 38, with her unassuming vibe and sharp eye for patterns, she was perfect. No corner office, no chauffeured rides, just a company Amex tucked in her wallet and a direct line to the C-suite. That afternoon's fiasco? It lit a fire under her. Back home, as Jamal wolfed down leftover lasagna and rambled about a robotics club fundraiser, Sarah paced the kitchen, replaying the scene. "Mom, you okay? You look like you want to punch something," he said, eyeing her over his fork. She forced a smile, ruffling his curls. "Just a rough errand, kiddo. Some lady at the store lost her mind." But inside, resolve hardened. This wasn't isolated. It was symptomatic. How many employees of color dealt with customer bias daily? How many lost sales or quit over unchecked racism? By evening, Sarah was on her secure laptop, drafting a memo. Not to HR, but straight to the board. Incident report, customer racial profiling in store Suburban 478. Recommendations, mandatory bias training rollout. Effective immediately. The next morning, Sarah returned to the Home Depot, not as a shopper, but in her official capacity. She met with Mike the associate in the break room, over stale coffee and vending machine donuts. "That woman yesterday," she started, sliding a business card across the Formica table. "Sarah Jenkins, VP Operations, Brightpath Retail. She put you in a tough spot. How often does stuff like this happen here?" Mike's eyes widened, donut halfway to his mouth. "Whoa, you're the boss?" More than you'd think, ma'am. Folks call it in weekly. Karens mostly, targeting the diverse staff. We de-escalate, but it wears on people. Last month we lost 2 cashiers over it." Sarah nodded, jotting notes. "Tell me everything." Over the next hour, stories poured out. The elderly white woman who'd accused a Latino stalker of loitering in his own store. The group of retirees who'd demanded a whites-only line during Black Friday chaos. The viral TikTok of a manager breaking up a near fight over a suspicious black teen browsing sneakers. Each tale chipped away at Sarah's patience, fueling her plan. Meanwhile, Evelyn Hargrove nursed her wounds at the country club, regaling her lunch bunch with a sanitized version of events. "I was only trying to help." She sighed into her iced tea, the condensation beating like unshed tears. "These days you can't say anything without backlash. It's reverse discrimination, I tell you." Her friends clucked sympathetically. Marla from the garden committee, who once called the cops on a Mexican food truck for ruining the curb appeal. Betty, whose son-in-law was a cop and always backed her gut feelings. But even they shifted uncomfortably when Evelyn pulled out her phone to show a blurry photo she'd snapped of Sarah mid-accusation. "See? Shifty eyes. Mark my words, she'll be back." And back Sarah was, but not alone. By midweek, Brightpath had launched a quiet investigation. Sarah coordinated with corporate security, pulling incident logs from a dozen stores in the Atlanta metro. Patterns emerged like veins in marble. Repeat offenders flagged by license plates from gated enclaves like Evelyn's Fair Oaks Estates. One name popped up repeatedly: Evelyn Hargrove, serial complainer, with complaints dating back to 2019. A deep dive into public records revealed more. Evelyn's husband had lost his job in a diversity hiring scandal at the bank, fueling her grudge. She'd been sued once for defamation after accusing a black neighbor of property devaluation over a backyard swing set. Sarah's report hit the boardroom like a thunderclap. "This isn't just bad PR," she argued in the virtual meeting, her face framed by the glow of her home office lamp. "It's a liability. We're bleeding talent and trust. We sue these Karens for defamation, or better, expose them. Make an example." The board, a mix of silver-haired execs and younger VCs, leaned in. "Bold," the chairwoman said, a sharp New Yorker named Lydia. "But smart. Start local. That Home Depot incident. Trace the accuser." Evelyn's world started cracking that Friday. She arrived home from her Zumba class to find a process server on her manicured doorstep, envelope in hand. "Mrs. Hargrove, you've been served." Inside, a cease and desist from Bright Path Retail citing defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violations of Georgia's anti-discrimination laws. Attached were affidavits from Mike and 2 other witnesses, plus stills from the security footage showing her fabrication clear as day. Panic set in. Evelyn called her son-in-law the cop first. "This is harassment. Sue them back." But he hemmed and hawed, citing departmental policy on civil matters. Next, her bridge club, who offered tea and platitudes but no real backbone. By Sunday, the story leaked. A local blogger, tipped off by an anonymous store employee, Sarah's doing, through back channels, posted, entitled "Atlanta Karen Busted for Racist False Accusation, Targets Black Shopper in Viral Store Standoff." The post exploded, 5,000 shares by noon, comments flooding in from across the country. Classic Karen energy. Time for accountability. As a black woman in retail, this hits home. Evelyn barricaded herself inside, blinds drawn. Phone on silent as reporters from the AJC circled her cul-de-sac. Her Facebook wall, once a shrine to grandkid pics and Reagan quotes, turned toxic. Doxing attempts, hate mail from all sides. Marla and Betty ghosted her group texts. The country club whispered about revoking her membership. In desperation, she drove to Home Depot that evening, hoping to confront the manager, to spin her tale one last time. But the store was transformed. Signs everywhere proclaimed, "Zero tolerance for bias, shop with dignity," and a diverse crew of associates greeted her with polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Sarah was there, of course, incognito at first, stocking shelves in the paint aisle as part of her immersion. When Evelyn stormed in, demanding to see whoever's in charge, Sarah stepped forward, shedding her vest like a second skin. "That would be me, Mrs. Hargrove, Sarah Jenkins, the woman you accused." Evelyn chose the apology. The video dropped on the company's YouTube a week later. Her, stiff in a cardigan, voice quavering as she read from a script. "I was wrong. My actions were rooted in prejudice, and I hurt an innocent woman. Sorry. To Sarah, to the community, to everyone I've judged." Views hit 1 million in days, comments a mix of skepticism and cautious hope. She followed through on the donation, $10,000 wired anonymously, and slunk into those training sessions, where a facilitator named Dr. Ellis unpacked her biases layer by layer. It didn't erase the damage, but it cracked the armor. For Sarah, life settled into a new rhythm. The garage shelves went up crooked but sturdy. The coral paint brightened the fence, and those LED lights turned backyard evenings into magic hour glows where she and Jamal grilled burgers and dreamed big. The Home Depot crew sent her a thank you card, scrawled with inside jokes about Gnomegate. And every so often, when a news alert pinged about another Karen caught in the act, Sarah smiled to herself. The twist wasn't just hers. It was a reminder, etched in viral ink, that the world was watching. And the underdogs, the everyday heroes like her, were rising. But let's talk about you for a second, because stories like this don't exist in a vacuum. Have you ever been on the receiving end of that kind of snap judgment? The one that says more about them than you? Drop it in the comments below. I read everyone, and who knows, your tale might inspire the next video. If this hooked you from that parking lot stare down to the boardroom reckoning, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to share more justice served hot. Subscribe if you haven't, and ring the bell for notifications because we've got more Karen Chronicles coming your way. Thanks for sticking with me through the twists. Until next time, stay sharp out there.